A-level Women in Literature comparative essay, you need to incorporate AO5 analysis. Your judgment must be consistently informed by explorations of different interpretations of the text. This short video will give you the eye-catching critical quotations you need for Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. So stay tuned, get a higher grade, and watch Schofield on Shakespeare.
Simili a degli eroi, abbiamo il cuore a strisce.
Number 1. Austen's cover story of the necessity for silence and submission reinforces women's subordinate position in a patriarchal culture. In relation to Sense and Sensibility, we see Eleanor having to remain silent following Lucy's revelation about her engagement to Edward. We also see her having to be submissive faced with her brothers and the Ferrers' rudeness. On the one hand, her belief in propriety does help sustain her sense of self-respect, but it also reinforces her subordinate position within this patriarchal culture. Such a quotation could potentially be weaved into this past question about secrecy being an important part of the female role in literature, taken from 2020. Number 2. Austen joins Mary Wollstonecraft in inviting readers to reconsider the standard assumption that men have sense, women have feeling. Weak binary oppositions need to be challenged and, according to Auerbach, are challenged within Austen's Sense and Sensibility. Colonel Brandon may be predominantly sensible, but his account of his extraordinary relationship with Eliza confirms that, historically at least, he has been passionate and Marianne-esque. Remember that he was within a few hours of eloping to Scotland with her. Eleanor is a woman and also quite clearly has plenty of sense, hence her cautiousness in choosing a house after being ejected from Norland, and her strategic politeness to the Middletons. Yet she also has plenty of feelings, particularly towards that weed Edward. It's just that she chooses to internalise them rather than hurl them into the public sphere. This quotation could potentially be used in this past question about female characters being more emotional and expressive than their male counterparts, taken from 2020. Number 3. Mark Twain crowned Eleanor the Queen of Waxwork, unable to warm up and feel a passion. What a fabulous metaphor. Shame it shows such a poor understanding of her character in the novel. Chapter 37. Eleanor is speaking to Marianne. If you can think me capable of ever feeling, surely you may suppose that I have suffered now. The composure of mind with which I have brought myself at present to consider the matter, the consolation that I have been willing to admit, have been the effect of constant and painful exertion. They did not spring up of themselves. They did not occur to relieve my spirits at first. No, Marianne. This quotation would also work well for this question about female characters being more emotional and expressive than their male counterparts, taken from 2020. Number 4. During Marianne's illness, Colonel Brandon both feels and thinks, cares and acts. In other words, it isn't just women who feel, but that dull, waxwork-y epitome of restraint and dignity, Colonel Brandon too. Another one potentially for the question about female characters being more emotional and expressive than their male counterparts, taken from 2020. Number 5. Austen always defers to the economic, social and political power of men as she dramatises how and why female survival depends on gaining male approval and protection. All the heroines who reject inadequate fathers are engaged in a search for better, more sensitive men who are nevertheless still the representatives of authority. Ultimately, Eleanor wants Edward's approval and protection, however inexplicable that may seem to many of her readers. Certainly, Marianne's marriage to Colonel Brandon can be seen as the steady, safe option. Brandon would never hurt her in the way that Willoughby did so cruelly. Of course, Austen tries to convince us otherwise in chapter 50. Marianne could never love by halves, and her whole heart became in time as much devoted to her husband as it had once been to Willoughby. But are we wholly convinced by this? This quotation could potentially be used in the past question about female characters having to settle for what life offers them from 2022. Number 6. Austen's story is especially flattering to male readers because it describes the taming not just of any woman, but specifically of a rebellious, imaginative girl who is amorously mastered by a sensible man. Is this, to some extent, mere feminist cant, and should it be challenged? Is Marianne rebellious or imaginative, or perhaps immature and naive, or both? And why might this be flattering to male readers? For instance, is Fanny's taming and manipulation of her husband flattering to female readers? The quotation could be weaved into an essay about whether female figures have to settle for what life offers them. That was taken from the 2022 past paper. Number 7. And yet Marianne does in effect die, whatever the name of the automaton which submits to the plans or its relations and joins the social game. It is not the real Marianne, and in the devitalised symmetry of the conclusion, something valuable has been lost. My, what an emotive quotation. Marianne has vanished, only to be replaced by an unnamed automaton. Whatever happened to characters evolving and changing? Do we have to be the same person at 16 as we are in, say, our 20s? Another one that could potentially be weaved into an essay about female figures in literature settling for what life offers them, taken, of course, from 2022. Number 8. For many men and women, sense becomes little more than a calculated self-interest in obtaining cents and percents for oneself. In Sense and Sensibility, more than in any other novel, Austen links the pursuit of money to the destruction of finer feelings. There's a lot of truth in this. However, within the context, is it that surprising? For men, and especially women, there are so few ways of becoming financially secure or prosperous. It's no wonder that so many, Lucy Steele, Robert Ferrers, John Dashwood, Fanny Dashwood, Mrs. Ferrers, Willers, end up prioritising it at the cost of finer feelings. This quotation could potentially be used in this past question about female characters being acutely aware of the importance of money and status, taken from 2023. Number 9. It makes me most uncomfortable to see an English spinster of the middle class describe the amorous effects of brass, reveal so frankly and with such sobriety the economic basis of society. A splendid little ditty, and certainly Austen loves going into a great deal of detail about money and how much each character does or doesn't have or wants. For instance, Willoughby's estate had been rated by Sir John at about 600 or 700 a year. Not enough for that man's dissolute, extravagant lifestyle. Marianne desires a husband with only 1,800 or 2,000 a year, not more than that. Following the loss of Marianne's bloom, her brother uncharitably and characteristically insensitively speculates whether she now will marry a man worth more than 500 or 600 a year at the utmost. And Miss Morton famously has £30,000. Once again, this quotation could potentially be used in this past question about female characters being acutely aware of the importance of money and status, taken from 2023. Number 10. The vulgar Lucy Steele schemes her way up to the social ladder. Succinct but perfect for the essay title on female characters in literature being acutely aware of the importance of money and status.
This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, giving you 10 critical quotations about Jane Austen, Sense and Sensibility, to weave into your A-star essay. Many thanks for watching.